Avrohom did all the mitzvahs, but he didn't do Bris Mila. He was waiting to be told. In the Torah aid, we learned the reason he waited to be told is because he wanted something called Mila Ha'al Yoina. In this Sicha, the Rebbe said he waited to be told because this was the only mitzvah that Avrohom was able to do that had, again, the three expressions that I sort of made a priority. Hamaisahu ha'ikir, nisava kadosh baruch hu li yisleis baruch dida b'tachtenim, and bittul ha'gzeira, the idea that there's no decree between heaven and earth, and that when you do a mitzvah, the physical things becomes a godly entity. For Avrohom Avinu, it happened only in one mitzvah, it happened in mitzvah's bris. Avrohom Avinu waited to be told so that he should have this mila of being able to permeate the physical thing. And as the Rebbe explained to us in the Sicha yesterday, Avrohom did this one mitzvah physically, and he gave us a koyach to the mitzvah physically. And there's a story with the Rebbe. It's a guy's name was Yehuda Avner. And he's passed away. He wrote a book of his life, but he also did a lot of interviews about his relationship with the Rebbe. So he tells a story. It was in the Rebbe's room. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's falling asleep. So the Rebbe suddenly says to him, in the middle of the Yechidus, Reb Yehuda, Ata makir oisonu kol kach toiv, lama ein ata me'itanu, or something like that. He quoted it verbatim, but I don't even know if it's precise. He says, you know us so well, how come you're not one of us? So he tells the Rebbe, Mipnei sheyesh li b'mishpachti ko'elu, there are people in my family who attribute things to the Rebbe that the Rebbe doesn't attribute to himself. So the Rebbe responds, Kenire yesh adayin anoshim shetzichim lekabayim. Evidently, there are people in this world who still need crutches. So this is the story. And then immediately the Rebbe went back to talking to politics with him. Why? The Rebbe told him a story. He woke him up. He got his attention. He didn't even realize what the Rebbe did. The Rebbe saw that he wasn't paying attention. So the Rebbe said something provocative. He woke him up, went back to business. So he tells the story, but when you listen to the story carefully, you understand what just happened. The Rebbe said once in Fabrengen, that you find in the Chazal, that when the Rebbe was teaching the Talmidim, and they saw they were falling asleep, he would say something shocking. Like Rabbi Kiva was once sitting with his Talmidim, and they were falling asleep, so Rabbi Kiva said there was a lady in Mitzrayim who gave birth to 600,000 babies in one pregnancy. So everyone sits up. So Rabbi Kiva says, what are you talking about? Tzipoida? She had Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu with a Nasi who akail. It's a Rabbi Chazal. So she had 600,000 children in one, but it got everybody's attention. Anyway, I hope that I just woke you up, because that's why I just told the story. Because I feel like I'm talking to a beautiful, wonderful group of people about, what's the expression?
Sleepy Joe.
Blank stares. We used to have a principal in Lubavitch here downstairs. His name was Mr. Slamnicki. I saw that he passed away recently. So he had a sign on his wall, which actually copied. It said like this: answers $1. Answers that require thought $2. Correct answers $4. Blank stares still free. So there's a lot of freedom over here, a lot of blank stares. Let's finish. We're going to finish the Sicha and I'm going to move on to the next item. I'm on page 12 if you have your pages. The aforementioned advantages of Mitzvah Mila, which is two things. Number one, it takes over the goof. And number two, it's not a one-time thing. Mitzvah Mila stays with the person every second. Every second that a Yid is circumcised, as if now he has a bris with the Eibishter. Number one, that it makes the physical thing itself holy. Number two, the mitzvah continues for later on, is euch gewen far Mattan Torah. In the case of Bris Mila, it existed before Mattan Torah. Just one. When the Rebbe, therefore, Avrohom Avinu at Bashveden sein Knecht Eliezer, when Avrohom Avinu makes his servant Eliezer swear, go to the next underline, please. Avrohom Avinu tells them, put your hand on my bris, which is so inappropriate. Why did Avrohom Avinu do it? Because only in Mila was there a holiness in the bris. Is geblieben aufständig, remained for constant. Und der Rebbe at Eliezer kennt schweren by der mitzvah. This physical thing had a kedusha, and there was a point in swearing. How do we do a shvur today? I mean, we should never do it. The best way to live your life is never ever have a din Torah, right? But unfortunately, if you have to have a din Torah, some cases there's need for shvur. I mean, Chazal, the Rabbanim are very careful about these things. But a Shulchan Aruch, you put your hand on a Sefer Torah, you put your hand on a mezuzah, you put your hand on film, because it's a chafza shel mitzvah, it's a chafza shel kedusha. Avrohom didn't have tefillin. He put on tefillin, but he didn't have a kedusha. He had a bris. That's the only one he had, and that's why he had no choice. The mitzvah teich farenfet, it explains also havas Avrohom Avinu had gewart. This explains why Avrohom Avinu waited. If Makayim zayin the mitzvah Mila, to fulfill the mitzvah of Mila, bis der Eibishter him geheißen zu tun until Hashem told him to do it. Und hat sie nicht Makayim gen von sich allein. He didn't do it by himself. Punkt wie hat Makayim gewähnt alle anderen mitzvahs, as he fulfilled all other mitzvahs. Weil die mitzvah, the one mitzvah of Mila, is ähnlich zu the mitzvahs for noch Mattan Torah, was similar to the mitzvahs that we do now that the Torah was given. Der mit in the aspect, was he is mamshich gedush and dem gashmi allein, it brings holiness to the physical thing itself. Und if dem hat gemusst haben matzivoi, for this he needed to be told. Was das is an esinat keach momaylu, which provides him a strength from above. Avrohom waited to be commanded, because Avrohom understood that bris was different, and the only way he could have the maila of physically doing a mitzvah and the kedusha should remain in the physical things of being told, so he waited. So here you have a kasha with two terutzim. In Torah Eid we had a kasha. In Torah Eid we had a kasha. Why did Avrohom Avinu not do bris? And the answer was the situation with Mila Tachtein and Mila Layena. In Likutei Sichos said the same kasha but a different teretz. Why does Avrohom Avinu wait to do bris? Because he wants the bris should affect his physical body. Now, turn the page, please. Page 17, which you have now, is a page from a RaMbaM in Pirush HaMishnah. This is a very, very interesting idea. This is a RaMbaM in his commentary on Mishnah, which tells us a very, very interesting thing. We do Bris Mila, why? We do not do Bris Mila because the Eibusha told Avrohom Avinu to do Bris Mila. That's not the reason. We do Bris Mila because in Parshas Tazria, it speaks about when a lady has a baby, and you have a short pasuk. Uvayoyim hashmine yimel b'sara lasi. It's 5 words. Uvayoyim hashmine yimel b'sara lasi. On the 8th day, you should circumcise the basar, the flesh of his orla. So the halacha is, the Matthias is, we do not learn the dinim of Bris Mila from the long Parsha in Lecha, which we learned last week about Bris. We learn it from 5 words in a Parshas Tazria. And there's a reason why. And the reason is because we have a rule that says, Ein lemeidin milifnei Mattan Torah. Which means, Ein lemeidin milifnei Torah means you cannot learn mitzvahs from anything which is written before. If the Torah says something in Sefer Bereshis, it's not a mitzvah. The only time it's a mitzvah if it's written in Parshas Bo or later. So the RaMbaM has a kasha. Gid HaNosha is one of the 630 mitzvahs. That you're not allowed to eat a sciatic nerve of an animal is a mitzvah. It's allowed. Where is Gid HaNosha written? It's written in Parshas Vayishlach. So the RaMbaM says, I'm going to read inside with you, okay? V'sim libecha liklal hagadol hazeh. I want you to apply your heart to the following great principle. HaMilva b'Mishnah zu, which is brought in this Mishnah. For who Amram, which is what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah is speaking about Gid HaNosha of Pedig Zayin of Masechta Chulin. Mi Sinai Nesa. That Gid HaNosha was prohibited at Sinai. For who? Why is the Mishnah telling us that Gid HaNosha was prohibited at Sinai? Says the RaMbaM, Shatot Tzorich Ladas. You need to know. Shekol ma sha'onu nizharim mimenu. Anything which we are nizah, which means we're careful not to do. That means aleisas. Or we do today, which is a mitzvah say. Ein anu eisim zois. There's no mitzvahs that we have today, not mitzvahs leisas, and not mitzvahs say. Elam mipnei tzivi havaya idemei shechaz eibishal meishar rabbein. Loi mipnei, not because Shem tziva bekach l'neviim shekadmu, that the Eibishter gave this instruction to the prophets who came before him. Dugma lekach. For example, ein anu eichel meiva menachai. We do not eat the limb from a living animal. It's one of the worst avedas. But loy mipnei shahashem osar al b'nei neach eiva menachai. It's not because the Eibishter outlawed eiva menachai to goyim. El mipnei she Moshe osar aleinu eiva menachai. Moshe Rabbeinu outlawed from us eiva menachai. B'ma shenitztave b'Sinai. He was told again at Sinai, she'yishoyer eiva menachai osar, that eiva menachai should remain osar. V'chein, similarly, ein anu malim, we do not do a bris. Beglal Avrohom Avinu moles afer v'anshe beis, because Avrohom Avinu circumcised himself and the members of his household. Ela mipnei shahashem tzivonu al yedei Moshe, because Hashem commanded us through Moshe Rabbeinu lehimel, to do a circumcision. Kamesha mol Avrohom Avinu, all of Hashem Avrohom Avinu did. It's a very important klal in Torah. We do not learn ein lemeidim ilifnei Mattan Torah. We do not learn mitzvahs which written before Mattan Torah. So by Bris Mila, it says a second time. In Parshas Tazri, it says a second time. But by Gid HaNosh, it doesn't say a second time. It says in Parshas Vayishlach, the story of Yankov Avinu, that he had to fight to the Malach, and the Yankov was limping, and then the sun shone, and he healed. And then it says, Al Kain Layechu B'nei Yisrael Gid HaNosh Ad HaYom Hazeh. For this reason, the Jewish people do not eat the Gid HaNosh Ad HaYom Hazeh. So the RaMbaM has a question. If there is a rule that Ein Lameidim Lifnei Mattan Torah, where is Gid HaNosh again? Okay? So the RaMbaM continues, and I didn't underline this part. V'chein Gid HaNosh, when it comes to Gid HaNosh, Ein Onu Nimshochim Bei Achrei Issa Yankov Avinu. Our prohibition against Gid HaNosh is not because of Yankov Avinu, El Tziv Moshe Rabbeinu, Tziv Moshe Rabbeinu. The RaMbaM holds that the pasuk in Parshas Vayishlach, Al Kain Layechu B'nei Yisrael Gid HaNosh, was added after Mattan Torah. It was written in Parshas Vayishlach, but it was added later. Because there's a rule in Torah which says we do not learn any mitzvahs from Lefnei Mattan Torah. Now, Rabbi say, this is a RaMbaM. That's a simple RaMbaM. The RaMbaM tells us, "Klal ein lemeidim lifnei Mattan Torah." We don't learn any mitzvahs from Mattan Torah. So the question is, we make a bracha by every bris. Asher kedeshanu b'mitzvesa v'tzivanu lachnisei b'vrisei shel Avrohom Avinu. Why? By every single bris, we mention Avrohom Avinu. Hashem gave us a commandment to do a Bris Mila of Avrohom Avinu. If there is a rule that ein lemeidim lifnei Mattan Torah, we're not doing Avrohom's bris. The bris that Avrohom Avinu, we're not doing Beklal. We're only doing our bris. It's a bris by Moshe Rabbeinu. Why would we mention in the Nusach HaBracha of Bris Mila, La'achnisei be'vrisei shel Avrohom Avinu, if the bris that we keep is a different bris? This is the kasha. Now, I have two sichas. I printed in the original stack one, and then I looked, whatever, I found the sicha that I really wanted to teach. So in the end, there are two different sichas that I want to learn with you that are both going to answer this question. They're similar answers. They're not exactly the same. They're very similar answers. And I want to talk this through with you because I think that this is it's Yossi Dike stuff. But the Rebbe asks a kasha. Why do we say in the Nusach of our bris lachnis everything Shem Avinu if we have nothing to do with Avrohom Avinu's bris? Okay, I want you all to do me a favor and go to page 20. My numbers, go to page 20. I'm skipping a little bit. Yeah, I want to do this quick. Bottom of the first column, page 20, please. Kolon Yonash or Mitzvah Mila. The whole idea of Mitzvah Mila is B'yois Hatinik Ben Shmenas Yomim. When the baby is 8 days old, Be'ez Shemushla Ladayin, when the child is so little that he's completely removed, Mikol Inyan Shel Das Havana Vasoga. From any idea of understanding, a baby of 8 days old not only doesn't have an ability to make a choice, he doesn't even have an ability to understand what's going on. Sure. So you take a baby, he's 8 days old. What's the value? What's the credibility of doing a bris on a baby who's 8 days old? And the answer is Mitzad Giloy Haneshama V'Keichesa V'Ruchnim. Because the credibility of a bris of a baby is 8 days old. It has to do with his neshama and his spiritual faculties. No, I'm saying it wrong. Forget. As far as his consciousness is concerned and his spirituality is concerned, a baby is 8 days old, is in no position to have a bris. They have no position to make a choice. Nevertheless, he tila, top of the second column now, hatera Allah, the Eibishter mandated, lihiyes nimel, they should have a bris, begils at the age of 8 days old. Lefisha kol inyan ha-Bris Mila, who the entire idea of Bris Mila is, shebesar haguf hagashmi shaloi, that the physical flesh of this child, yiskashe bevris HaMakadosh Baruch Hu, canal should become attached in a covenant with the Eibishter. If you want to make a covenant with the Eibishter, and the Eibishter is eternal, the best way to make a covenant with the Eibishter is eternal, if the other member of the covenant has no day. Because if you have a day, you can interfere. You're involved with Hashem. Hashem is in infinity. No. Because if you choose it, it's defined by your choice. It's defined by the degree of investment or dedication you make in the bris. Correct. When you have a bris, when you're 8 days old, it's only the Eibishter. And the Rebbe continues. There's a Menachem Mendel Haradok. For those who do not know, the Alter Rebbe had, during his lifetime, 3 Rebbes. His first Rebbe was the Mezritcher Maggid. When the Mezritcher Maggid passed away, his Rebbe was Rabbi Avrohom the Malach, Avrohom the angel. When Avrohom the Malach passed away, he became a chassid of Mendel Haradok. After a few years, Mendel Haradok moved to Eretz Yisrael. But as long as he was alive, the Alter Rebbe considered himself his chassid. His time he used to write letters to him. When Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya, he writes in the beginning that some of the ideas of the Tanya come from his Rebbe's in Eretz Yisrael, and this meant like Mendel Haradok. He was a big tzaddik. So Mendel Haradok has a small little sefer called Pri Ha'aretz, and he writes like this: Mevu Eres Ha'afla. It describes the wonder Shal Nisoyin Ha'aked of Avrohom Avinu, the Nisoyin of the Aked of Avrohom Avinu. And he says, and I'm reading just the underline, if you have a copy. V'atamu, what makes the Akedah special? Lefish Avrohom Avinu hayarish. What makes Avrohom Avinu special? Avrohom Avinu was the first. She'amad b'nisayin zeh, that stood up to such a test. U'bechol kekoindah, in every such case, harei li yes harishay nudav kasha b'yes. To be the first is very, very difficult. There's a story, which is brought from Chassidim. It's an interesting story. The story is that the Mezritcher Maggid was called the Rebbe of Rebbes. The Mezritcher Maggid was involved only with tzaddikim. The Mezritcher Maggid only involved with tzaddikim. In fact, there's a whole story with a dream where the Alter Rebbe said that the Mezritcher Maggid had a big chesaron. As great a tzaddik as he was, the Mezritcher Maggid had a big chesaron that he didn't have any Bali Tshuva. The Mezritcher Maggid was not involved with simple people. The Mezritcher Maggid was only tzaddik. So if you came to Mezritch to be the Mezritcher Maggid, he chose if you're going to be one of his chevra or you're not going to be one of his chevra. If he chose no, you were not. So hundreds of people came to be accepted into the chabur of the Maggid. Most of them, the Maggid said, you're not invited. So the Maggid said Torah, or the Maggid had a tish, you were not able to be there. Most of the people who came to the Maggid were sent home. If somebody wants one copy, there's one copy here.
Why didn't he accept everybody?
The Maggid. When you're starting a new movement, it has to be perfect. Once it's strongly established, then you can expand it. Think about it and push the words, yeah? Avrohom Avinu was a great man, yeah? People flocked to Avrohom Avinu. What when Avrohom Avinu passes away? When he passed away. All the people freaked out. She said, don't worry, he has a son Yitzchak. Nah, he's not his father. The Baal Shem Tov passes away, yeah? What happens? Baal Shem Tov had a huge following. Others, there's Talmid, nah, they're not him. One of the hardest things is to create a movement that should last more than one generation. If you have a new idea, a new shita, usually the person who creates the shita dies with him. How do you make the shita last? So the simple answer is, you have to take the shita away from the person and put it into the ideas. Correct? But for most people, that's very difficult. Because we're drawn to a person. If you had all the ideas of the Rebbe, but not the Rebbe himself, what would you have? It's all the person, right? So how do you make it last? You have to take it away from a person and make it into ideas. There's only one way to do it. You reduce the movement to a few people. And those people have to represent those ideas perfectly. And when you have a generation of people who take the ideas of the Rebbe, of the first, and make them their own in a perfect way, now you've separated the ideas of the Shita from the Mechadesh HaShita. And that's why it lasts. That's what Yitzchak did. That's what the Mezritcher Maggid did. And in all events where a Gadol B'Yisrael created a Shita that was a Shturim de Gezach, the way it lasts, the second generation is always the hardest. The Mezritcher Maggid reduced Chassidus to a small group of people, but those people on an incredibly high level. So the story was, the Mezritcher Maggid was a Rebbe, he had a very, very small following. Other people came and the Maggid didn't accept. Most of the people that the Maggid didn't accept went home, they left. They said, where am I going to stay? The Rebbe's not accepting me. But you had Chevre who decided they're going to stay anyway. People the Maggid rejected, and they decided to remain, and they decided to be Talmidim of Talmidei HaMaggid. So they were called in those days, they called them Harubnikis. Harubnikis means oven warmers in Russian. I mean, I speak as much Russian as you speak Mandarin, but Harubnikis means oven warmers. They were shamoshim. They cut herrings for Fabrengen, they cleaned the tables after the Fabrengen, they chopped wood, they made the ovens warm. These Harubnikis were big Talmidei Chachamim. Gewaldike Yirei Shamayim, they were big people. The Maggid rejected them, and they decided that they'll be Kabbalah from Talmidei HaMaggid. So one day, one of the Talmidei HaMaggid overheard a machlokes between these three Harubnikis. The rejects were having a conversation. And the conversation was about, why do we make such a big deal of Avrohom Avinu and the Akedah? Historically, there have been millions of Jews, who've given their lives al Kiddush Hashem, who've sacrificed their lives. And if you know the story of the Yemei Abinayim of the Middle Ages, there were occasions where people kill their own children, so they shouldn't end up in Christianity. These stories, read them in the Kinnis. So we make such a big deal about Avrohom Avinu, they took Yitzchak to the Akedah. And Avrohom was told directly by the Eibush, it wasn't written in a sefer, and it didn't come from some Rav. The Eibush himself told Avrohom Avinu to take your son to the Akedah. The kasha is, why do we make such a big deal out of Avrohom Avinu taking to the Akedah? So, these three Harubnikis were arguing about it. One person said, Avrohom Avinu was special because he did it b'simcha. He did it with joy. Another person said, Avrohom Avinu was special because he did it b'zrizos. He did it with alacrity, quickly. And the third person said, does anybody need a copy? The third person said, Avrohom Avinu was special because he was Pesach HaSatzina, because he was the first. Avrohom Avinu was special because he was Pesach HaSatzina, because he was the first. So the Alter Rebbe, I think, said about these three Harubnikis, that each one was holding in the madrega that he spoke. Meaning to say, that the one who said that Avrohom Avinu was special because of the b'simcha would have done it himself b'simcha. The one who said Avrohom Avinu was special because he did it b'zrizos would have done it himself b'zrizos. And the one who said that Avrohom Avinu was special because he was the first one would have been the first. So in Tanya, in Igeres HaKedesh Chav Beis, the Alter Rebbe brings zrizus say to Avrohom Avinu. Here, the Mendel HaRadake brings the Pesach HaTzatina. In other words, Talmidei HaMaggid overheard this conversation between the so-called rejects, and they incorporated it into their Torah. You know why Avrohom Avinu was special? Because they went to the Akedah. Because he was the first. He was the first one to do Mesilas Nefesh. Everybody who comes after Avrohom Avinu was second. He opened up the path of Mesilas Nefesh. So the Rebbe says something very interesting. V'atamu, I'm reading the bottom of page 20 now. Avrohom Avinu Hayarisha, Avrohom was the first. Sha'amad b'Mesilas Nefesh b'Nisayin, they overcame this test. Or b'Cholka gained on anything of this case. Harei yes harish nadavar kasha b'yes to be the first is the most difficult thing. Turn the page. So the Rebbe says like this: Heravot. What does it mean? I'm the first. I opened up a path and people follow me. Like you have in Medrash, it's brought to Chumash. You have a boiling hot bath. One guy jumps in, he burns himself as a gut. What happens afterwards? People go in after him. When you watch somebody do something initially, it creates an opening for other people to follow. Page 21 says the Rebbe, Omnam, however, when can you say that if somebody goes first, you go second? If you have an awareness. Listen carefully. If a person has an understanding, and a person has a feeling, and a person has an awareness, they watch somebody go before, they follow. In order for a person to overcome with his own strength, the hardships he has in this thing, he knows, and he feels, and someone came before him, especially if his father, he opens up a channel for him, for other Jewish people. It helps you do your avodah. If you know that before you, others did what you're doing, it makes it easier. Avrohom Avinu was the first one who did the inyan HaMesiras Nefesh. After Avrohom Avinu, for us to have Mesiras Nefesh is easy. Says the Rebbe, however, if you're doing something and you have no understanding and you have no awareness and you don't know that someone did it before you, something is happening to your body, you're making no preparation and no making yourself fit to do it. And of course, what's the best example? A baby. When you're talking about a child, there's no control and no influence of his mind and his heart and his senses over himself. The baby is so little he doesn't even know what's happening to him. An 8-day-old baby said, don't worry about the bris. They did it yesterday with somebody else. He doesn't know what you're talking about. He doesn't know you're talking to him. An adult, or even a child, but he has awareness, you can say, listen, you're not the first one to do this. This was done before. But if you're 8 days old, you have no concept of somebody else. You have no concept of before. So the Rebbe says, I made in the kavat, Im kain harei muvan. The muvan in this case, ein hefresh beinei ubein harish. There is no difference between any Jew today who has a bris at the age of 8 days old and the first person who did the bris. In this act, harehu harish, and he is the first. Ki ein lo siyua mehabol lefonav. He has no support from what came before him. There is a mud in the kavod. Do you know why we say by a bris lachnisa bevrisa Avrohom Avinu? Because every baby is Avrohom Avinu. In other words, the shaila that we have is that the RaMbaM says a klal in Pirush HaMishnayos. We don't learn any mitzvahs. What happened before the Eibishter gave us the Torah? Right? That's what RaMbaM says. So how come when we do a bris, we're saying lachnise bevrise shel Avrohom Avinu? So the Rebbe says we're doing a bris because Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu. Why are we mentioning Avrohom Avinu? Because every little baby is Avrohom Avinu. When a baby has a bris, that baby isn't exactly the same madreg of Avrohom Avinu. Avrohom Avinu was the first. That baby is the first. How was that baby the first? Because that baby is so immature. That baby is so young. That baby is so underdeveloped that that baby is not influenced by the fact that there's any history. And because that baby is not influenced by the fact that there's any history, that baby is mamish the first. And the Rebbe concludes, Ubazeh Yuva, this explains, Masha'onu Eimrim, which is why we say by a bris, La'achnise bevrise shal Avrohom Avinu, to enter into the covenant of Avrohom Avinu, Ki in Yonei u'ma'alase shal Avrohom Avinu, who the mile of Avrohom Avinu is, Bazeh Shahayu Harishni is the first canal. Whereas every baby who does this mitzvah as a baby, as far as he is concerned, he is the first. Therefore, he's mamish doing the bris of Avrohom Avinu. So it's not the pshat that we learn the bris from Avrohom Avinu. We learn the bris from Moshe Rabbeinu. But what bris is he doing? In other words, what's the advantage of doing a bris on a baby who's 8 days old? He mentioned the Sicha. Chelek Chafei, the Rebbe has a Sicha, which is an argument between Yitzchak Avinu and Yishmael. Yishmael says, I was 13 when I did a bris, I'm better than you. And Yitzchak says, I was 8 days old and I did a bris, I'm better than you. Of course, Yishmael's right. Yishmael had a choice. Yishmael could have run away. So the end of the story is, Yitzchak says to Yishmael, if the Eibush will tell me to give my life for him, I will. And that's why it says in the Chumash, that after Yitzchak and Yishmael had this argument, the Eibush said, okay, let's see if Yitzchak is ready to give himself away, and we all know the story of the Akedah. So the Rebbe has a Sicha and says, Apasha Takasha. Why isn't Yishmael right? He was a 13-year-old boy. And why is he not correct to say that he made a choice in the bris? And the Rebbe answers, mitzvahs you have to do with consciousness. Bris you don't want to do with consciousness. Why? What's a mitzvah? I'm serving Hashem. What's a bris? I'm connected to Hashem. There's a very big difference between serving the Eibishter and being connected to the Eibishter. If you're serving the Eibishter, you don't make your own free will, you're not serving Him. But connected to the Eibishter, the more you mix in, the more complicated the connection is. The best way to have a connection is not to mix in. This is why the mitzvah is to do it on an 8-day-old baby. Says the Rebbe, if you're doing a bris on an 8-day-old baby, there's no such thing as precedent. There's no such thing as history. The baby who's 8 days old is Avrohom Avinu. He's Avrohom Avinu. Avrohom Avinu was the first to have a bris. This baby is also the first. And this is why we say the nusach, La'achnise bevrise shel Avrohom Avinu, because even though Ein Lameidim Elifnei Mattan Torah, we're not learning the mitzvah of Bris Mila from Avrohom Avinu. We're learning the quality of the bris of Avinu. Avrohom Avinu's bris was in a way that he was the first. Every baby is the first. Tomorrow we're going to learn another Sicha. In this other Sicha, the Rebbe is going to say a word that I absolutely love. For me, it's one of the most exciting words in Likutei Sichos. The Rebbe doesn't bring the shaila of the Bracha, La'achnise bevrise shel Avrohom Avinu, but I think the ideas that the Rebbe is going to say here are consistent with that.